Hello, I'm Anterior Wema. In this video, we want to look at menstrual cycle. If you haven't watched my previous video on folliculogenesis, make sure you watch it in order to understand more about what menstrual cycle is all about. Now, what is menstrual cycle? You need to know that menstrual cycle is a series of natural changes in hormone production and structure of the ovary and uterus, which makes gravidity to be possible. Now, the essence of menstrual cycle is for gravidity, for pregnancy. That is the main reason why female undergo menstrual cycle. You understand my point now? So when we are talking about menstrual cycle, we want to look at those cyclic changes that are occurring in the ovary and also in the what? Uterus. That is what menstrual cycle is all about. Those changes that are occurring in the ovary and also in the what? Uterus. But where exactly in the uterus do we have menstrual cycle occurring? In the endometrium. You know, when we are talking about the uterus is divided into three parts. The first part is what we call the endometrium. Yeah, so this is the first layer of the what? Uterus. Yeah, this is what we call the uterine lining. This is where the blastocyst will implant during the process of what? Gravidity. Now, the second layer of the uterus is what we call the what? Myometrium. Yeah, so the myometrium is just like a thick muscular layer that connects the endometrium to the perimetrium. So the third one is what we call the what? Perimetrium. So the perimetrium is the outer serous covering of the uterus. So these are the three layers of the what? Uterus. But where exactly do we have menstrual cycle occurring? It is in the endometrium. So that is why I make use of the uterine event. Then I make use of endometrium. Because it is exactly in the endometrium that is where this process of menstrual cycle is occurring. Now, before I go into menstrual cycle details, you need to understand that in female of a reproducing species, menstrual cycle can last for 21 to 35 days. Yes. Are you understanding now? Menstrual cycle can last for what? 21 to 35 days. This is the length of menstrual cycle for all reproducing species when we are talking about females. Though there are some times that menstrual cycle can occur at a mean average of 28 days. Yes. Menstrual cycle can occur at a mean average of 28 days. Now, when a menstrual cycle is less than 21 days, then we can say that the female have what is called polymenorrhea. When we talk about polymenorrhea, it means that when you are having too much of menstrual cycle in a single calendar year. You know, normally in a single calendar year, a female should undergo just 12 menstrual cycles so that they can see their 12 menstrual period. But in polymenorrhea, as a result of less menstrual cycle occurring in the female can have more and more menstrual cycle occurring in a single calendar year. So that's what we call polymenorrhea. But when a menstrual cycle is greater than 35 days, then a female can have what is called oligomenorrhea, whereby they are going to have lower amount of menstrual cycle in a single calendar year. Most especially, a female should undergo 12 menstrual period in a single calendar year. But if it is oligomenorrhea, the female will have like 6 menstrual cycle or 6 menstrual period in a single calendar year. So that is about that. Now, you need to also know that during the process of menstrual cycle, when we talk about menstrual cycle can start in female at the age of 13 to 15 years. Are you getting my point now? You know, there's a particular menstrual period a female refers to. That menstrual period is what we call menarche. That is the first menstrual period a female undergo at the stage of puberty. So menarche can begin at the age of 13 years or at the age of 15 years, depending on the female body. I get my point now. So that is around this period. There are some times that menarche, which is the first menstrual period of a female, it can start around 8 years. Yeah. There are some times that menarche can start at the age of 8 years. That's what we call precocious puberty. When we say precocious puberty, what does that mean? It means that when the body of a female is become that of an adult so soon, that's what we call precocious puberty. You get my point now? Normally, the menarche, which is the first menstrual period of the female, it should occur around 13 to 15 years. But if it is occurring around 8 years, that tells you that it is a precocious puberty. When that the body of a young female child is becoming that of an adult soon. So that's about that. Another thing you need to know about menstrual cycle before I go into details is that in menstrual cycle You know, at the end of menstrual cycle, there's something called menstrual period. Menstrual period denotes that during the process of menstrual cycle, the ovulated egg is not fertilized by sperm. And you can understand my point, which you are going to understand in this event, which is the menstrual cycle event. Now, in the menstrual period of a female, the female menstrual period should last for about 2 to 7 days. Yeah, the female menstrual period should last for about 2 to 7 days, but at a mean average of 3 to 5 days. So I don't want to know about any female. Their menstrual period should be in between 2 to 7 days, with a mean average of 3 to 5 days. But when the menstrual period is less than 2 days, that's what we call implantation bleeding, which we are going to understand as time goes on. But when the menstrual period is greater than 7 days, that's what we call what? Menorrhagia. Menorrhagia. When there's heavy or prolonged menstrual bleeding, that's what we call menorrhagia. When your menstrual period is greater than 7 days. Yeah. Now there's something I want you to know, that when we talk about menstrual cycle, you know, I said menstrual cycle begins at the age of 13 to 15 years. While it's in people which have precocious puberty, it begins at the age of 8 years. The menstrual cycle can last for about 30 to 40 years until the female reaches menopause. Because menopause can come in maybe around 45 to 55 years. Yeah, so that's about menstrual cycle, and you need to know all these things. You get my point now. So now let's go into menstrual cycle in details. Yeah, now let's take for example, this is a female ovary, and this is a female what? Uterus. You know, I said in the menstrual cycle, we want to look at those cyclic changes that are occurring in the ovary and also in the uterus. So these are the events that are occurring in the ovary, and these are the events that are occurring in the what? Uterus. But where exactly in the uterus? Endometrium. Now, in menstrual cycle, what I just want to explain is that I want to look at how hormones leads to cyclic changes in the ovary and the uterus. That's what menstrual cycle is all about. So these are the hormones. Now, before we start, I want to explain how these hormones come into play. You know, in menstrual cycle, we want to look at a series interplay of hormones. That is what menstrual cycle is all about. So first of all, there's something we call female hypothalamic pituitary axis. Yeah, when we say female hypothalamic pituitary axis. Now let's say for example, this is the, let's say this is the hypothalamus. Yeah, this is the hypothalamus. Now, we have what is called, let's say this is the, so this is the hypothalamus, and this is the what? Pituitary gland. You know, when we talk about the pituitary gland is divided into two. This is what we call adenohypophysis. Adenohypophysis. The adenohypophysis is also called what? The anterior pituitary gland. Now, when this one at the posterior part is what we call neurohypophysis. Neurohypophysis is also called posterior pituitary gland. So these are the two pituitary glands. You know, pituitary gland is at the base of the brain. So this is the hypothalamus. And you know, menstrual cycle is controlled by hypothalamus. You get in females. The female menstrual cycle is controlled by the hypothalamus, which is present in the brain. It's part of the brain, you know. Hypothalamus is part of the forebrain. You get my point now? So let's say this is the hypothalamus. During puberty, that is when menstrual cycle begins. Now, during puberty, the hypothalamus will release what we call gonadotropin releasing hormone. What is releasing the gonadotropin releasing hormone? Hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus releases gonadotropin releasing hormone on the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Do you get what I'm saying now? So this gonadotropin releasing hormone that is released by the hypothalamus is going to where? To the anterior pituitary gland. So when the gonadotropin releasing hormone goes to the anterior pituitary gland, it stimulates the anterior pituitary gland to release hormones that are called gonadotropin. Yes. Are you getting my point now? So can you see that it is both the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland that controls the process of what? Menstrual cycle. So when the hypothalamus secretes gonadotropin releasing hormone, the gonadotropin-releasing hormone is going to the anterior pituitary gland. So this anterior pituitary gland is stimulated to release its own hormone called gonadotropin. What are the gonadotropin hormones? The gonadotropin hormones are the FSH. The FSH is what we call what? Follicle stimulating hormone. And this one is LH, which is what? Luteinizing hormone. Now there's something I want to tell you before that. Before the female reaches puberty, the gonadotropin releasing hormone by the hypothalamus is at steady rate. Do you get? The gonadotropin releasing hormone is at low quantity. But when the female reaches puberty, the gonadotropin releasing hormone is very large in the blood. And the magnitude and frequency of the gonadotropin releasing hormone determines the level of FSH and LH that will be released by the anterior pituitary gland. Are you getting what I'm saying now? So during the process, the anterior pituitary gland releases its own hormone called gonadotropin, which is the FSH and LH. But you need to understand the fact that in puberty, when the female reaches puberty, the FSH is high in the blood. It is highly concentrated in the blood than the LH. Now, if you look at this menstrual cycle event, you know I said this is the ovarian event and this is the what? Endometrial event, which is the uterus. Now, you need to know that in the ovarian event is also divided into follicular phase. The ovarian cycle is divided into the follicular phase, which begins at day 1 and end at day 13. Then from day 13 to 14 is the ovulatory phase. That is the shortest phase of menstrual cycle. So that is the ovulatory phase, the phase at which the egg is ovulated. Then from day 15 to day 28 is the luteal phase. You know, in the ovarian cycle, we want to look at how there is release of mature egg and how there is cyclic changes in estrogen and progesterone, which you are going to understand. Now, in the endometrial event, which is the uterine cycle, it's also divided into menstrual phase. This is the menstrual phase, which lasts from day 1 to day 4. And we also have the proliferative phase from day 5 to 14. And we also have the secretory phase from 15 to 26. And from 26 to 28 is the premenstrual phase. Yeah, all these phases we are going to understand it in this video. Now let's continue, please. Now, if you don't forget, I said the anterior pituitary gland have released FSH and LH. So it is this gonadotropin that will cause cyclic changes in the ovary and in the uterus. And you need to know that the ovary, the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle occur simultaneously. It is coordinated. It occurs correspondingly. So any changes that is occurring in the ovary, they will send signal to the uterus, which is the endometrium, so that the endometrium can also undergo a series of changes. Do you understand now? Which you are going to understand in this video. Now, this is the FSH that is released in the blood. You know, I said when the FSH and LH is released, the FSH will be high in the blood than the LH. So this is the FSH in the blood. Now, this FSH in the blood is present here. You know, I told you that when a female wants to undergo their menstrual cycle, female begin their menstrual cycle through the process of menstruation. So when a female sees their menstrual period, that tells you that they have started a new menstrual cycle. So when a female starts their menstrual period at day 1, that is the period at which their menstrual cycle also begins. Do you get what I'm saying now? So that's to tell you that a female menstrual period marks the beginning of new menstrual cycle. Now, if you look at this female, the female from day 1 to day 4, she's still undergoing a menstrual period. Let's say that in her previous menstrual cycle, an egg was released in the ampulla, waiting for the sperm. But because the sperm did not fertilize the egg in the ampulla, that is why she's undergoing menstrual period. And you know, I said menstrual period can last for about 3 to 5 days. So, can you see from day 1 to day 4, this female is undergoing a menstrual period. But why is it undergoing a menstrual period? It's because in the ovary, there's a particular follicles in the ovary. You get the ovary, the follicle is called primordial follicle. Now, if you go and watch my video about folliculogenesis, there's something I said about the primordial follicle. I said the primordial follicle is made up of primary oocytes surrounded by a single layer of flat follicular cells. I get what I'm saying? And how many primordial follicles do we have in the ovary at that point of time? There are about 300,000 to 500,000 of primordial follicles. Now, the pituitary follicle in the ovary, that is what makes the female to be seeing their menstrual period. You know, they have begin a new menstrual cycle. So when they begin their new menstrual cycle in the ovary, they are only left with what? Pituitary follicle. About 300,000, 500,000. So this pituitary follicle that is present in the ovary, that is why the female is still undergoing their menstrual period. Now, can you see the endometrium? The endometrium has become shedded. You know, when it says endometrium becomes shed, that means that the female is undergoing their menstrual period. The endometrium becomes sloughed off, it's shed off, it becomes degenerated. That's what we call what? Menstrual period. So that is why. Now, something happened. You notice that after some period of time, when a female is undergoing their menstrual period, it will now reach a certain time whereby the female menstrual period will cease. You get? You know, I said menstrual period lasts for 3 to 5 days. So it will reach a particular time whereby their menstrual period will cease and they will not see their vaginal bleeding anymore. That's to tell that in the ovary, the pituitary follicle has got converted to what? Primary follicle. What makes the pituitary follicle become primary? Is a lot of FSH. It is the FSH that makes the pituitary follicle to become what? Primary. Now, if you look at it, 300,000 to 500,000 pituitary follicle has become what? 15 to 20 primary follicle. Now, the FSH makes the pituitary follicle to become primary follicle, and it also recruits 15 to 20 primary follicle from 300,000 to 500,000 pituitary follicle. So, can you see the function of FSH? Follicle stimulating hormone. Now, when the pituitary follicle has got converted to what? Primary follicle. There is a particular structure in the primary follicle, we call it granulosa cell. But before that, something happened. And what is that? The luteinizing hormone, which is secreted at low quantity. You know, I said the FSH and LH are in the blood. They are suspended in the blood. But the FSH is higher than the LH. But this LH, as it is very low in the blood, it will also perform a specific function here. And what is that? You know, in the primary follicle, there is presence of Teca cells. Most especially the Teca interne. If you go and look at the folliculogenesis video, I explain more about the Teca follicula. So in these Teca cells, this Teca cell will develop a receptor. You get? And that receptor will bind with what? LH. So when the receptor of the Teca cell binds with LH, it causes the LH to secrete what we call androstenedione. What do I call it? Androstenedione. Yes. So it is the Teca cells of the primary follicle that bind with the FSH to secrete this what? Androstenedione. This androstenedione is a steroid hormone. This serves as a stepping stone for testosterone. You know, female also has testosterone, but their own level of testosterone is very low compared to male. I get my point now. Let's go on. Now, when the androstenedione is released, then what now happens? The granulosa cell will also develop a receptor that will bind with what? FSH. And when it binds with FSH responds to that receptor and converts androstenedione to what we call what? 17 beta estradiol and ostrones, which will later give rise to what? Estrogen. Are you getting my point now? So can you see that it is both the luteinizing hormone and FSH that brought about the release of what? Estradiol and ostrones that will later give rise to what? Estrogen. So the Teca cells stimulate the FSH to release this steroid hormone. And also the granulosa cells stimulate the what? The FSH. So that the FSH can convert androstenedione into what? 17 beta estradiol and ostrones. You know, there's a process that converts this androstenedione to what? Ostrones. They call it aromatization via the enzyme known as aromatase. Do you understand now? So there's a particular enzyme that also helps in the conversion of this androstenedione to this. I get my point now. So that is how estrogen come about. So in this sense, you can just say what gives rise to this estrogen is the granulosa cell. You know, the granulosa cell is part of the cells that are surrounding the primary follicle. So when the effects of granulosa cell that brought about the estrogen, if you don't forget, in the uterus, which is the endometrium, it has become shedded, the menstrual period. But when the pulmonary follicle becomes primary follicle, as a result of the release of estrogen, what happens to the shedded endometrium? It begins to build up. So can you see? The endometrium begins to what? Build up. That's what called proliferative phase. Proliferation. How the endometrium build up, how they become proliferated. That is what this phase is telling us. So it's a result of the estrogen that build up the what? Endometrium. But estrogen do not only build up the endometrium, it also thickens the endometrium. What do I mean by thickness? It means that estrogen directs from arteries, arterioles, they call this spiral arteries, superficial arteries. They direct the arteries to the what? Endometrium. And those arteries begin to become what? Dilated. They dilated and they pour out blood into the what? Endometrium. So that the endometrium can become what? Thickened. That is the function of estrogen. So estrogen do not only build up, it also thickens. It adds blood vessels. It adds oxygen, nutrient to the what? To the endometrium. Now let's continue please. We are still on follicular phase and now I'm in what? Proliferative phase. Now if you don't forget, FSH is still not performing that function. You get my point now? So the FSH, it is believed that it is not FSH that converts primary follicle to secondary follicle. You know, in the process of folliculogenesis, something happens whereby the primary follicle becomes secondary. Yeah, you need to go and watch that video to understand more about that. So FSH is not responsible for the conversion of primary to secondary. That's what we call gonadotropin independent stage. They do not depend on FSH. FSH is just present so that these follicles will not undergo atresia, will not undergo death. And why FSH is still present is because FSH still want to recruit about 15 to 20 secondary follicle from primary follicle. But it is not the one that converts primary follicle to secondary. But it is the one recruiting the finite number of those follicles to become 15 to 20. That's why FSH is still here. So now the primary has become secondary. There's something you need to know. As the primary becomes secondary, what happens to the layer of granulosa cell? The layer of granulosa cell increases. So as this follicle is growing, the layer of granulosa cell increases. You know, granulosa cells are those cells. Do you get what I'm saying? These are the granulosa cells. So can you see that the granulosa cell in secondary follicle is higher than the one in what? Primary follicle. Because as the primary follicle becomes secondary, there's increase in layer of granulosa cells. Now look at the granulosa cell. So when there's increased layer of granulosa cell, what happens to the estrogen? The estrogen increases. So estrogen is dependent on granulosa cell. So as the granulosa cell increases, the estrogen secretion increases. Now as the primary becomes secondary, estrogen increases. And as estrogen is increasing, what happens to the endometrium? The endometrium tends to build up more and more. So what we just need to know is that FSH in the blood, primary becomes secondary. As primary becomes secondary, what happens? There's increased layer of granulosa cell. Granulosa cells secrete more of what? Estrogen that helps to build up our what? Endometrium. So estrogen build up and thickens the what? Endometrium. That is about menstrual cycle. That's why I said it is a what? It is a concurrent phase that occurs simultaneously. So any changes occurring in the ovary will send signal to the endometrium to also undergo some cycle changes. Now let's continue please. If you don't forget now look at something. The secondary follicle now wants to become the what? Graphial follicle in the ovary. Now, as the secondary follicle wants to become the graphial follicle, something happens. You know, 15 to 20 secondary follicles should become 15 to 20 graphial follicles. But if you notice, we only have how many graphial follicles? One graphial follicle. So when one of the secondary follicle becomes graphial follicle, the graphial follicle has more layer of granulosa cell than the secondary follicle. So the granulosa cells in the graphial follicle will cause surge in estrogen. Can you see that down? The estrogen becomes surged. There is spike in estrogen. Why is there spike in estrogen? Because this one graphial follicle, this layer of granulosa cell cause the estrogen to become increased. There's a reason why this estrogen becomes more and more increased. Now the reason is that they did not want more of the secondary follicle to become graphia. We only need one graphia follicle that will become ovulated. So as one of the secondary follicle become graphia, the graphia follicle leads to surge in estrogen. So this estrogen will now have a negative feedback mechanism. What is negative feedback mechanism? A mechanism that tends to decrease a change, while positive feedback mechanism amplify a change. So the estrogen that is released in surge will cause a negative feedback mechanism whereby it is going to inhibit the pituitary gland, the anterior pituitary gland, so that FSH will be inhibited. You know, when FSH is inhibited, then there will be nothing to recruit 15 to 20 seconds to become graphia. Please, I want you to understand this thing very well. What I'm trying to insinuate is that 15 to 20 secondary follicle should be 15 to 20 graphia follicle. But it cannot happen like that. So as one of the secondary follicle become graphia, this graphia follicle, which is one, will lead to surge in estrogen. So this surge in estrogen will have a negative feedback mechanism on the pituitary gland, whereby FSH become what? Inhibited. Can you see? The level of FSH decreases. So as FSH is decreased, what happens? The remaining 14 to 19 secondary follicle will never become the what? Graphia follicle. Are you getting my point now? You know, when one of these has become this, it remains how many secondary follicle? 14 to 19. So that changes quickly happen whereby FSH becomes shorted. I get what I'm saying now. So the FSH becomes decreased so that more of this secondary follicle, which is 14 to 19, will not become graphia. So this remaining 14 to 19 secondary follicle, what happens to them? They die off. They undergo atresia. That's what we call corpus atriaticum. Atriaticum. You know, when we say something is atriaticum, atresia, the death of follicular cell. So this remaining 14 to 19 secondary follicle dies off, and that's what we call what? Corpus atriaticum. And they are later replaced by a layer of connective tissue. Now we have one graphia follicle here. Do you understand my point now? Now, if the surge in estrogen inhibits what? FSH. By a process known as what? Negative feedback. As it inhibits FSH, do you know what happens? That surge in estrogen will also cause LH to be what? Increased. Can you see what estrogen does? Estrogen inhibits FSH in order to what? Increase LH. Do you know why LH is increased? Can you see? LH, luteinizing hormone. The LH is increased so that the graphia follicle, which is one, will become ovulated. So that's to tell that the hormone responsible for ovulation is the what? Luteinizing hormone. So this luteinizing hormone is the one that will cause this graphia follicle, which is one, to become ovulated. Now there are some times that two graphia follicles can also be what? Released. And if two graphia follicle is formed, what will that happen? That means that two eggs will be ovulated, and it can lead to what? Fraternal twins. So it depends on the level of FSH. That's why the FSH needs to be suddenly what? Decreased, so that more of this secondary will not become graphia. Because if more of secondary become graphia, it will lead to what? Multiple beds. Yeah, this is where female delight there are multiple beds for, most especially those fraternal twins. They come from here if these two graphia follicles become ovulated. So let's just say, in normal case, let's just say it is just one graphia follicle, and one egg has become ovulated via an hormone called what? LH. Now, I want to explain how LH will lead to what? Ovulation. How LH will cause this graphia follicle to become ovulated. You know, this is the ovulatory phase. You get, I'm done with the follicular phase. So this is the ovulatory phase now. In the ovulatory phase, let's look at how the graphia follicle become what? Ovulated. How the egg that is present in the graphia follicle, how it extrudes out from these surrounding cells. That's what I'm going to explain now. Now you need to understand. Now let's say this is the, okay, this is the secondary oocyte. And what is surrounding the secondary oocyte is the what? Zona pellucida. And then we have what we call the antrum, and these are the granulosa cells. Yeah, these are the granulosa cells. Let me use this. These are the granulosa cells. And this is the cumulus what? Ophoros. Alright, so this is what we call Graafian follicle. I want to explain how luteinizing hormone will cause the Graafian follicle to become ovulated. That's what I want to explain. Now, the luteinizing hormone performs a specific function. Now, the first thing is that luteinizing hormone will cause the surrounding cells to bulge. There's a spot of growth, and that's what we call stigma. Now, look at it. This is what we call the stigma. What is causing this stigma? Luteinizing hormone. This stigma is an avascular spot that is made up of collagen fiber, making it to become dense and rigid. So what makes up this stigma is what we call what? Collagen. So it is collagen that makes the stigma to be kind of dense and thickened. Now, since the stigma is made up of collagen, luteinizing hormone will not be like, wow, how can we break down these surrounding cells? Because this point serves as where the egg will become extruded during the process of ovulation. Now, the luteinizing hormone will now stimulate an enzyme. They call that enzyme collagenase. What do I call it? Collagenase. Yeah, so this is the enzyme stimulated by NH. So the collagenase will break down this what? Stigma. Are you get what I'm saying? So as we break down the stigma, what happens to the what? Egg? Both the secondary oocyte and the zonal pellucida, they extrude out. Now look at it here. This is it here. This is the secondary oocyte, and this is the, alright, and this is the zonal what? Pellucida. Tell you that the secondary oocyte and zonal pellucida has extruded out in the ovary. How you get what I'm saying? That is how luteinizing hormone leads to ovulation. Not only that, luteinizing hormone can also stimulate prostaglandin activity, whereby prostaglandin will cause local muscular contraction of the what? Ovary, causing the what? Surrounding cells to break free. So as the surrounding cells break free, what happens to the secondary oocyte and zonal pellucida? They extrude out from the what? Surrounding cells. That's what we call ovulation. Now something happens. As the secondary oocyte and zonal pellucida extrude out, this is it here. Don't forget that. What are those cells that degenerate during the process of ovulation? These are the cells. The cells are the granulosa cells. Yeah, granulosa cells, the theca cells, and the cumulus ophoros. I get what I'm saying now. So these are the cells that degenerate during the process of what? Ovulation. So as the secondary oocyte and zonal pellucida, you know these two, they need to leave the ovary and enter into the ampulla so that they can wait for the sperm. So as these two, which is the secondary oocyte and the zonal pellucida, as they want to escape the ovary into the ampulla, then what happens to the cumulus ophoros? Cumulus ophoros will be like, wait, you guys cannot leave. Then the cumulus ophoros will now rearrange themselves around the zonal pellucida to become the what? Corona radiata. So the corona radiata is the cumulus ophoros. It's just that the cumulus ophoros reline and rearrange themselves around the zonal pellucida. That is what we call the corona radiata. So it is now the secondary oocyte, the zonal pellucida, and the corona radiata that will now leave the ovary and enter into the ampulla, waiting for the sperm for the process of what? Fertilization. So this is what we call cumulus oocyte complex. Anywhere you hear cumulus oocyte complex, it means that they are talking about the secondary oocyte, the zonal pellucida, and corona radiata. So it is the cumulus oocyte complex that will leave the ovary and enter into the ampulla, waiting for the sperm. Now, I'm done with the ovulatory phase. That is how the egg becomes ovulated, which I've explained. So if you don't forget, I've also explained follicular phase, I've explained the proliferative phase. Now in the follicular phase, what happens? The granulosa cell in each follicle will release estrogen. Then estrogen build up the endometrium. Just know that in the proliferative phase, the endometrium becomes builded and thickened as a result of what? Estrogen. Now after that, we have the ovulatory phase around day 13 to day 14, the shortest phase of menstrual cycle. So the egg has become ovulated. Now I'm in the luteal phase and also in the secretory phase now. Now let's continue. Now if you don't forget, the egg, which is the cumulus oocyte complex, The second oocyte, the zonal pellucidal, and the what? Ulnar diaphragm, they are now in the ampulla of the uterine tube or the fallopian tube. Do you understand? They are waiting for what? The sperm. Alright, let's continue. Now, we don't have the cumulus again. Is that not true? Because the cumulus has rearranged themselves to become the ulnar diaphragm. So it has gone with the what? With the air into the ampulla. So what are the remaining cells that are still in the ovary? We still have the granular cell and the theca cell that are still in the ovary. You understand my point? These cells, they are still in the ovary. So those granular cells and theca cells that are still in the ovary, you know, as a sort of rupturing of them by ovulatory activities, what happens to them? They begin to pour out blood. As they begin to pour out blood, they are now called corpus hemorrhagicum. What I call it? Corpus hemorrhagicum. Yes, corpus what? Hemorrhagicum. You know, hemorrhage, pouring out of blood. So these two cells, which is the granular and theca cells, they begin to pour out blood as a result of the ruptured ovulatory activities, and that's what we call corpus hemorrhagicum. But after some time, they heal. And when they heal, the splicing hormone will be like, wow, let me convert these two cells to become lutein cells. So the splicing hormone converts these two cells that gush out blood and convert them to lutein cells. Then you know, when cells come together, cell will make up a tissue. You know, when a group of cells come together, it forms a tissue. So when the lutein cells come together, what will they form? They form the corpus luteum in the ovary. So that is the day that the corpus luteum is formed from the granulosa cell and the theca cells with the help of which hormone? Luteinizing hormone. Now this is the corpus luteum. Now when the corpus luteum is present in the ovary, what happens? There is surge in the release of what? Progesterone. Now look at my progesterone. Look at my progesterone. The progesterone that is not performing any function before has become surged. It has increased in the blood as a result of what? Corpus luteum. Though estrogen is also present, but estrogen has become lowered. So the corpus luteum will cause the progesterone to become increased. Do you know why? So that the progesterone will begin to maintain the endometrium. As estrogen is building up the endometrium, what happens to the corpus luteum? They maintain the endometrium. You know, when they are building a house, and the house is not maintained, do you know what will happen? The house will collapse. That is why the progesterone is needed here, in order to maintain the endometrium, so that this endometrium will not collapse. So as estrogen is building up the endometrium, the progesterone will maintain the endometrium. Now can you see corpus luteum? Now there's something I want to explain. Don't forget that in the ampulla, the egg, the cumulus oocyte complex, is waiting for the what? Sperm. Now you need to know that this egg can only last for 24 hours, and that's how many days? 1 day. If the egg does not see sperm approximately 24 hours, what happens to the egg? It degenerates. Now let's say the egg that is present in the ampulla does not undergo fertilization, is not fertilized by sperm, or maybe the female did not undergo a process known as coitus. So if it's not fertilized by sperm, then what happens after these 24 hours? This egg will degenerate and die off. And when the egg dies off, after 9 days of ovulation, this is ovulation, day 13 to 14. After 9 days, that is how many days? Day 23. The corpus luteum in the ovary begins to die off. It begins to degenerate. Can you see? That's what we call involution. What do I call it? Involution. Yeah. So the corpus luteum begins to degenerate. Why? Because the egg, the cumulus oocyte complex in the ampulla, is not fertilized by sperm. So that is why the corpus luteum is degenerating. You know, the corpus luteum is made up of lutein cells. So those cells begin to undergo luteolysis. They begin to die. And they become what? Involuted. Involution. So as they begin to die, what happens to the what? Progesterone. The progesterone begins to decrease. You know, the corpus luteum is what that causes progesterone to increase. Now, the corpus luteum is dying off. What happens to the progesterone? It decreases. And you know, if the progesterone is decreasing, what will happen to the endometrium? The endometrium will begin to shed off a little by little. Are you understanding this thing? Now, the ovulation, the corpus luteum begins to degenerate more and more, and it has degenerated in the sense that it has now reached a point called corpus albicans. You know, corpus albicans is a fibrotic scar of mass tissue. Do you get it? It is a degenerated corpus luteum. Yeah, so the corpus luteum degenerates and eventually become more degenerated to become the corpus albicans. And what happens to the corpus albicans? The corpus albicans will now totally decrease the level of progesterone and also estrogen. And when these two hormones has become decreased, please, my friend, what will happen to the endometrium? It begins to shed off. It begins to what? To slough off. The endometrium degenerates, it dies off. And that's what leads to what? Vaginal bleeding. You know, there's something I really want to explain. Now, you know that the endometrium, let's say this is the endometrium. Yeah, so this is the endometrium. The endometrium is made up of 3 layers. Yeah, let's say 3 layers. These are layers. The first layer is what we call the compact layer. Compact what? Layer. The second layer is what we call the spongy layer, and the third one is what we call the basal layer. The compact layer and the spongy layer is also called the what? Functional layer. Yes, functional layer. Now, when there is decreased level of estrogen and progesterone, because the corpus luteum has become corpus albicans, what happens to the endometrium? It begins to what? Shed off. That's what I want to explain. Now, in the functional layer of the endometrium, which is the compact and spongy layer, they are made up of cells. Are you getting what I'm saying now? So when there is decreased level of estrogen and progesterone, there will be no hormone to send arteries. You know, I said estrogen thickens the endometrium. So when there is decreased level of estrogen and progesterone, there will be no hormone to send arteries, superficial arteries, spiral arteries to this functional layer of the endometrium. And when there is no hormones to send arteries into the functional layer of the endometrium, what happens to the arteries that are present in the endometrium before? They begin to become constricted. Instead of the arteries to become dilated and pour out blood, they become constricted. They hold their blood. And when those arteries, which is the superficial arteries, become constricted, the functional layer of the endometrium undergo ischemia. When we say ischemia means blockage of blood circulation. There is no free flow of blood to be what? To the functional layer. And you know, when there is no free flow of blood to the functional layer, what happens to the cell in the functional layer? It begins to die off. Those cells that make up the functional layer, they become thin. You know, before they were thick because of presence of estrogen and progesterone. But because estrogen and progesterone have decreased, so they become thin. And when those cells become thin, what happens to the cell? They become thin because they are deprived of oxygen and blood. So as a result of that, a particular hormone will be stimulated. We call it prostaglandin. So it is that prostaglandin that will now cause local muscular contraction of the uterus. So as a result of that, the cells that make up the functional layer, they shed off, they slough off, and contribute to what? Vaginal bleeding. That is why you see female releasing blood. Do you get it now? That is about that. Now, if you don't forget, there is a particular layer of the endometrium that will not shed off in this functional layer, which is the compact and spongy. What is that layer? The basal layer. So the basal layer of the endometrium will never shed off. So if another menstrual cycle wants to begin, if they want to begin another menstrual cycle, it starts from the what? Basal layer. So the basal layer serves as a regenerative layer to become the what? Spongy and compact layer if another menstrual cycle begins. So the basal layer do not shed off. It is only the functional layer that shed off, contributing to what we call menstrual period. So that is about that. So there's something I want to explain again. This occurs if the egg that is present in the ampulla is not fertilized by sperm. That is why we are seeing female undergoing their menstrual period. That is why the functional layer slough off and contribute to what? Vaginal bleeding. Now you need to know that the level of prostaglandin release determines the level of pain a female will undergo during the process of what? Menstrual period. That is why some female tend to have menstrual cramps, menstrual pains. It's because as a result of what? Prostaglandin. So it's the prostaglandin, which is a local hormone that causes the menstrual cramps a female is having. So when there's too much of prostaglandin to cause local contraction of the uterus, what happens to their uterus? The uterus contracts and then they begin to expel too much of cell in form of blood, causing pain to them. That is about that. Now, what if the egg, what if the cumulus oocyte complex that is present in the ampulla is fertilized by sperm? Let's say the female undergo coitus and the sperm, you get, sperm, I trust them. When they enter into the word vagina, they use speed from the vagina and enter into the word ampulla. So when they meet with the egg, before the egg dies 24 hours, something will happen. If the sperm is fertilized by egg, the corpus luteum will never become corpus albicans. The corpus luteum will not degenerate. The corpus luteum will not die. There will be something that will prevent the corpus luteum from degenerating. And that's what we call what? Human chorionic gonadotropin. It is an hormone that is secreted by the syncytial trophoblast of the embryo, which are going to understand as time goes on. So it is the HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, that will prevent the corpus luteum from generating if the egg is fertilized by sperm. And when the corpus luteum is present, it does not degenerate. What happens? It will lead to corpus luteum of pregnancy, and then the egg will implant around this region, the secretory phase. This is where the egg will implant. You understand? When the effects of corpus luteum, if it did not degenerate, the corpus luteum will cause estrogen and progesterone to still be intact. And when there is intact of estrogen and progesterone, what happens in the endometrium? It tends to build up more and more. It builds up, it thickens, so that the egg that becomes fertilized become an implant through the process of nidation, implantation. That's what we call implantation. Are you getting my point now? So that is about menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle, a female undergo menstrual cycle for two reasons. Number one, for the process of seeing their menstrual period. And number two is because if the egg is released and they undergo coitus, what happens to the egg? It becomes fertilized and it releases what? Pregnancy. That is the main reason of the menstrual cycle. So this is about the cyclic changes of what? Menstrual cycle. So the menstrual cycle is telling us that it's an event that occurs in both the ovary and uterus. So any event, any changes occur in the ovary will send signal to the uterus. I get what I'm saying? As you can see, which I've explained in this video. So that is about that. So what is prevent the corpus luteum from degenerating? If the egg is fertilized, that is human chorionic gonadotropin. So that human chorionic gonadotropin is an hormone that serves as basis for pregnancy tests. You see all those females that are doing pregnancy tests. When they put the test strip into the blood, what is this test strip detecting? It is detecting the level of HCG. When they put the test strip in the blood, it shows a 2 line, control line. You get that line tells you that the experience of HCG in the blood. I get my point now. So the HCG tells you that the female is pregnant, and it is released by the syncytial trophoblast of the embryo. So that is about the menstrual cycle. Now, there's something I want you to understand that during the process at which the egg is not fertilized, I forgot to say before, when the estrogen and progesterone has become decreased, there is a spike in FSH. The FSH will become increased. Do you know why? So that this cycle can start all over again and they begin another menstrual cycle. You understand my point now? Before, there is no level of what? FSH, which has become inhibited. But when the corpus albicans leads to decrease in estrogen and progesterone, then what happens to the FSH? It increases so that it can begin another menstrual cycle. And that's why if female undergo another menstrual cycle and the egg is not fertilized, they begin to see their period. And as a result of that, the phase continues. That is how menstrual cycle is. That's what menstrual cycle is all about. So if the egg is fertilized by sperm, what happens? It leads to pregnancy, then 9 months and so on. So that is about menstrual cycle. Get my points now. So please, we are done with this video. Don't forget that at the end of this video, there is a practice question that can enhance and give you detailed understanding about menstrual cycle. Please don't forget to check out those questions and answer it with great mind. Thanks, and don't forget that I still remain my humble self, anterior vein. Please like and subscribe.